It was the sound of Claire's laugh that got me. That carefree, breathy giggle she used to reserve just for me. Except this time, it wasn't me making her laugh. I was standing in the hallway, outside our bedroom. The door was slightly ajar, just enough for me to see a sliver of what was going on inside. Claire was on our bed, but she wasn't alone. There was a man sitting next to her, his hand brushing against her leg, like he belonged there, like this was his place. My heart hammered in my chest, every beat making me feel sicker than the last. I wasn't supposed to be home yet. I had told Claire I'd be out late, catching up with an old friend, grabbing drinks, maybe watching the game. But plans fell through and I got home early. A surprise for her, I thought. Maybe we'd spend some time together, have one of those rare moments when things felt right again. But instead, I found her here with him. I didn't make a sound at first, my mind spinning so fast that I couldn't even process what I was looking at. They hadn't noticed me, too wrapped up in each other. She was laughing at something he'd said, her face flushed, her hand casually resting on his. I stood there like an idiot, rooted to the floor, while 1,000 thoughts battled for attention in my head. Who the hell was this guy? How long had this been going on? Was this the first time? No, couldn't be. They were too comfortable, too familiar. This wasn't some one-time thing. I don't know what came over me, but suddenly I was moving. I barged in, the door slamming against the wall with a force that shook the room. Claire's laughter cut off like a bad signal. She turned to face me, eyes wide, her face draining of all color. What the hell is this? I barked, my voice harsher than I'd ever heard it. The guy flinched but stayed sitting on my bed, a smug look slowly crawling across his face. Claire, on the other hand, didn't flinch. She didn't scream or scramble to explain herself. No, she just sat there, staring at me. Her lips parted like she couldn't decide if she should apologize or tell me off. And then, as if things weren't bad enough, she had the nerve to roll her eyes. Roll. Her eyes. Calm down. It's not what you think, she said, like I just caught her doing laundry or something. Not sitting on our bed with some random guy's hand on her. The guy stood up slowly, this tall, broad-shouldered dude, not even trying to act guilty. He looked down at me like I was the one intruding. I felt like something snapped in my brain. Not what I think, I repeated, my voice low, dangerous. I saw you, Claire. Don't you dare play games with me. She stood up, folding her arms like she was about to give me some lecture. You're overreacting, all right? This is just... She stuttered, finally at a loss for words. But then, like flipping a switch, she changed again. Her face hardened, and she squared her shoulders, as if she suddenly decided she wasn't going to pretend anymore. Okay, fine. You caught me. What now? Her words hit me like a brick to the face. The arrogance in her voice. The sheer disrespect. I stood there, stunned. For a moment, the room seemed to tilt, like the ground wasn't solid anymore. My brain struggled to process what she just said. What now? I repeated, my voice shaking with disbelief. I wasn't sure if I was about to explode or collapse. She didn't even try to hide it.
No fake tears. No stammering explanations.
Claire was standing there like I'd caught her sneaking a snack in the middle of the night. Not the guy. This stranger. Just stared at me with a lazy grin that made my stomach twist. He hadn't said a word yet, just watching us like he was waiting for the next act in some twisted play. The confidence oozing off him told me that this wasn't new. He was used to being here, in my house. I wanted to punch him. I really did. But something stopped me. It was like all the anger I should have had, the rage I was supposed to feel, suddenly vanished and turned into something else. A colder, darker emotion. Like all I had left was this hollow, empty space where the anger should have been. What the hell is wrong with you? I finally asked her, my voice low, strained. I barely recognized myself in that moment. I didn't yell. I didn't break anything. But the weight of my words hung in the air like smoke. You've been cheating on me, in our bed, and you're asking me what now? Claire sighed, like this whole thing was exhausting for her. She crossed her arms, looking at me like I was some overdramatic child. Look, Jake, she said slowly, her voice filled with condescension. I don't know what you want me to say. This just happened, all right? You weren't supposed to come home so early. I almost laughed. She was sorry because I came home too soon. Not because of what I walked in on. Not because she'd betrayed me in the worst possible way. What? You thought I'd be okay with this if I hadn't caught you? I shot back. My hands were shaking now, and I clenched them into fists just to keep myself from losing it. She rolled her eyes again, and I could feel the temperature in the room drop another few degrees. You haven't been paying attention to me for months, she snapped. You're always so busy with work or your stupid hobbies. And when was the last time we even spent a night together? And there it was. The blame. She was flipping this around on me like it was somehow my fault. Like I had pushed her into the arms of this jerk. Wow. So, it's my fault you're screwing some random guy in our bed? I asked, laughing bitterly. I looked over at him. He hadn't moved, just standing there with his arms crossed, watching us with that same irritating smile. Who even is this guy? I gestured toward him, my voice rising despite myself. How long has this been going on, Claire? She hesitated for the first time, her eyes flicking to the side, to him, like she wasn't sure how much she wanted to say. That hesitation told me everything. It's none of your business, she finally muttered, her voice quieter now, but still holding onto that edge of defiance. It just happened. It just happened. How many times had she said that, like she tripped and fell into this mess by accident? I'm your husband, I said slowly, enunciating every word like I was talking to a child. You don't get to say it's none of my business. How long, Claire? She bit her lip, annoyed, before finally giving in. A few months, okay? Does it matter? A few months. Months. My head spun with the realization. All those nights she'd stayed out late working. The random business trips she suddenly had to take. The excuses, the little lies I hadn't even questioned. It all started to click into place, each piece a fresh stab in the gut. Claire, noticing my silence, sighed again, this time softer, like she was growing tired of the conversation. Look, Jake, I'm sorry you found out like this, but things between us, they haven't been working for a long time and you know it. My eyes met hers, and for the first time since I walked in, I saw something besides coldness. Maybe it was regret, or maybe it was just her realizing how much she'd underestimated me. But I wasn't going to let her spin this narrative. Not this time. Oh, don't you dare make this about us, I said, stepping closer, my voice low and dangerous. You've been lying to me for months. You've been screwing this guy behind my back and expecting me to just... What? Pretend it's my fault? Like I wasn't good enough for you. She didn't say anything. Her arms tightened around her chest, her jaw clenched, but she didn't deny it. And then, without missing a beat, she dropped the final bomb. I don't love you anymore, Jake. It hit me like a slap. The air sucked out of the room in one brutal second. I stood there, frozen, as she let those words hang in the air, like a death sentence. I don't know what I was expecting her to say, but it wasn't that. Her words hung in the air, slicing through the silence like a cold blade. I don't love you anymore, Jake. Everything around me slowed down, the world shrinking to just her face. Her lips still twisted in that infuriating look of defiance. I didn't say anything right away. What was there to say? I couldn't even feel the ground beneath me anymore. She had just cut me open, left me standing there, raw and exposed, and I was struggling to breathe. You don't love me anymore? I repeated, like saying it out loud might make it more real, or less real. I wasn't sure which, but she just stared back at me. No flinch, no hesitation. This was it. This was the real Claire. Cold, unapologetic, not even the decency of pretending. Her words were still sinking in, but before I could process them, he decided to speak for the first time. I'd almost forgotten he was even there, but his voice snapped me out of my haze. Yeah, man, maybe it's time to move on, huh? His tone was so casual, so damn dismissive, like he was giving me some friendly advice, like this whole thing was a misunderstanding we could just shake off. I turned to him, my body shaking with a mix of shock and rage I could barely keep contained. Move on, I spat, taking a step toward him, fists clenched. Move on? You're screwing my wife in my house, in my bed, and you think I'm just going to move on? He didn't back down. In fact, he smiled. The kind of smile that made me want to break every tooth in his smug face. Look, I get it, he said, almost too calmly. This sucks, okay? But Claire's right. You two haven't been happy for a while. And honestly, you can't blame her for finding. But before he could finish, I lunged at him. My fist connected with his jaw so hard it felt like I shattered something in my hand. He staggered back, grabbing at his face, eyes wide with shock. He clearly hadn't expected me to fight back. But the adrenaline surging through me drowned out the pain. For a moment, I felt alive again. I wanted to hit him again, wanted to tear him apart. But Claire was between us in an instant, pushing me back, her hands slamming against my chest. Stop! She screamed, her face contorted in fury. What the hell is wrong with you? What's wrong with me? I shot back, my voice hoarse with disbelief. Are you seriously asking me that? I just caught you cheating on me, and you think I'm the problem here? She wasn't listening. Her focus was on him, rushing to his side like he was the victim, like he was the one who needed her. She touched his face gently, checking his jaw where I'd hit him, and I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I stood there, breathing hard, watching her fuss over him like I was invisible. "Are you all right?" she whispered to him, her voice soft, concerned. The way she used to talk to me, like I had been replaced, just like that. He nodded, wiping at the blood on his lip, throwing me a smug look over her shoulder. "Yeah, I am fine. Your boy here just needs to calm down." My blood was boiling now, the rage pulsing through me, threatening to explode again. But Claire turned on me, her face twisted in disgust. Disgust. She looked at me like I was the problem, like I was the one who had broken something precious. "You're a damn psycho, Jake," she spat, standing between us like she was shielding him. "Look at you, losing it like a maniac. You think hitting him is going to fix this? You think this is going to change anything?" I could feel myself unraveling, my grip on reality slipping with every word she threw at me. "Why, Claire?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper now. "Why him? Why now? Why any of this?" She sighed, looking at me like I was a child asking too many questions. "Because, Jake," she said, her voice cold and emotionless. "I told you, I don't love you anymore. I haven't for a long time." Her words hit me again, just as hard as the first time. But this time there was something different. It wasn't just the shock. It was the finality. She meant it. She was done with me. Done with us. "You could have just left," I whispered, staring at her. "You didn't have to." I gestured at the scene, the two of them standing there, united, against me. "You didn't have to do this." She rolled her eyes again, like I was being dramatic. "Yeah, I could have, but I didn't. And now we're here. So what are you going to do about it?" Her challenge hung in the air, daring me to react. I looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time in years I didn't recognize her. This wasn't the woman I married. This wasn't the person I'd built my life with. Claire was gone. This was someone else. Someone cruel, indifferent, and utterly detached. "What am I going to do?" I repeated, my voice eerily calm now. I glanced at the door, my escape route, the only sane option left. I felt the weight of my decision press down on me, suffocating, but I knew what I had to do. I turned back to her one last time, my voice quiet but steady. "I'm leaving." And with that I walked out, leaving them behind. Leaving everything behind. I could hear her calling after me, but I didn't stop. I didn't look back, because for the first time, I realized I didn't need her anymore. As I walked out the front door, everything felt surreal, like I just stepped off a cliff and was falling, but in slow motion. My house, the place I'd called home for years, now felt like a stranger's. I left them behind in there, Claire and that guy. God, I couldn't even think his name without my skin crawling. How long had he been in my bed? My head throbbed as that question echoed, but I shoved it down, refusing to let it consume me. Not yet. The night air hit me hard. It was cold, almost biting, but it was like I needed it, like the chill was the only thing grounding me. My mind was racing, trying to latch onto something solid, but all I could feel was this emptiness expanding inside me. Claire's voice still rang in my ears. "I don't love you anymore." It was as if she'd been rehearsing that line for months, just waiting for the right moment to cut me with it. And it worked. I wasn't even angry anymore. The anger had dissolved the second I left that house. Now it was just nothing. I felt numb, like my brain had shut off all the circuits to stop me from crashing. I didn't know where I was going. I just kept walking. My feet carried me down the block, past houses that were lit up with Halloween decorations. Families enjoying their normal, drama-free lives. The irony of it all wasn't lost on me. My life had just exploded, but here the world kept spinning like nothing had happened. I ended up at the park, the one where Claire and I used to walk our dog. Funny how even something as innocent as a park bench now felt like a punch to the gut. I sank onto it, running my hands through my hair, staring blankly at the ground. Everything was so quiet out here, but inside my head, it was chaos. I couldn't stop replaying the scene from just half an hour ago. Her eyes, the way she stood there, defending him like he was the one who needed protection. It was the ultimate slap in the face. I grabbed my phone. My hands shook as I scrolled through my contacts. Who was I even going to call? Who do you turn to when your entire world just caved in? I thought about calling my brother, but what was I going to say? "Hey, guess what? My wife's been cheating on me, and she doesn't love me anymore. You free to grab a beer?" The truth was, I didn't want to talk to anyone. Not yet. No one could fix this. No one could rewind the last few months, fixed the mess I hadn't even seen happening right under my nose. My hand clenched around the phone, and I felt my chest tighten. I hadn't cried. Not yet. I hadn't even broken down. But that hollow feeling inside was growing bigger, and I didn't know what was going to happen when it finally burst. But then, something twisted in my chest. A realization I hadn't expected to hit me so hard. I was free. It started small, creeping up through the fog of disbelief and hurt, but it grew the more I thought about it. Claire was right about one thing. Our marriage hadn't been great for a while, but I'd been blind, convincing myself it was just a phase, that we'd get through it like we always did. I'd ignored the red flags, the distance, the nights she'd pull away from me without explanation. I told myself she was stressed, that she'd come back to me, but she didn't. And now I was free from it. Free from the pretending. Free from the lies. She wasn't my responsibility anymore. Wasn't someone I had to save or protect. She didn't love me? Fine. That wasn't something I could fix or fight for anymore. The more I thought about it, the more the strange feeling of relief started to wash over me. I could breathe. For the first time in months, I could actually breathe. But with that relief came something darker. A realization that hit harder than anything she'd said. She never loved me in the first place. Not the way I loved her. Not the way I had fought for us. For our life together. Claire wasn't just done with me now. She'd probably been done with me for a long time. Just waiting for the right moment to drop the bomb. And it didn't hurt her, not the way it was destroying me. I sat there, staring at my phone, and before I knew what I was doing, I dialed her number. My thumb hovered over the call button for a second, my heart pounding in my chest. Why was I doing this? I had no idea what I even wanted to say. I didn't want an apology. I didn't need more lies. But I needed something. Something that wasn't silence. Something to break the suffocating stillness in my head. Before I could change my mind, I pressed call. It rang once, twice, and then she picked up. Her voice was low, cautious, like she wasn't sure how to play this. Jake? What do you want? I almost laughed at the question. What do I want? How about my life back? How about a time machine? But instead, I stayed silent for a moment, gripping the phone so tightly it felt like it might snap. My mind raced, searching for the right words. Something that would make sense of all this. Something that would give me closure. But when I finally spoke, all that came out was, why? She was quiet on the other end, the silence stretching on like she was weighing her options, deciding how much truth she was willing to share now that the damage was already done. And then she said, because I didn't think you'd ever figure it out. My grip on the phone loosened. Her words hung there, cold, calculated. She didn't think I'd figure it out. That's what this was to her? A game she thought she could keep winning until I stumbled on the truth? I wanted to scream, wanted to demand more from her, but I was exhausted. Her words had drained whatever fight was left in me. I realized in that moment that there was no why that would ever make this better. No explanation that would make sense of the betrayal. She had simply decided I wasn't worth being honest with anymore. And with that final blow, I hung up the phone and let it slip from my hand, falling onto the bench beside me. The park was eerily quiet, the soft rustle of leaves the only sound around me. Her words echoed in my head, hollow and indifferent. Because I didn't think you'd ever figure it out. That's all it had been to her. A secret she could keep tucked away until she no longer had to. No guilt, no second thoughts. She never intended to come clean, never planned on giving me the truth. In her mind, I was just some obstacle, some clueless fool she could manipulate for as long as it suited her. I stared up at the dark sky, trying to make sense of it all. I wanted to be angry. I wanted to hate her. But all I felt was empty, like everything inside me had been hollowed out, and I was just sitting there in the ruins of a life I thought was real. It was so much more than her cheating. It was the fact that I hadn't mattered to her in the way I thought I did. I wasn't a husband in her eyes. I was a convenience. The worst part was how she made me doubt myself. Doubt everything I'd ever done. For months, I'd been working harder, trying to make things better between us, sacrificing time, effort, everything to hold on to what I thought was still there. And all that time, she had been laughing behind my back, taking advantage of my blind faith in us. I stood up abruptly, the stillness of the night around me suddenly unbearable. I couldn't sit there anymore. I needed to move, to do something, anything to shake this feeling. I walked, fast, not caring where I was going. My feet pounded against the pavement as I left the park, heading toward town, my mind racing with thoughts I couldn't pin down. I didn't know what I was looking for. I just wanted to escape the heaviness that was pressing on my chest. I wanted to feel something again, anything that wasn't this soul-crushing sense of betrayal. As I walked through the dimly lit streets, past past closed shops and quiet bars. I kept hearing her voice in my head, taunting me. You haven't been paying attention. You've been distant. You weren't supposed to come home so early. The excuses she had thrown at me were laughable now. She hadn't even tried to lie convincingly. She didn't care enough to put in the effort. In her mind, I wasn't worth a good lie. I kept walking, my thoughts spiraling. And then, out of nowhere, something snapped inside me. I wasn't going to let her win. She had taken enough from me. My time, my trust, my sense of self. She wasn't going to take my dignity, too. I wasn't going to be the broken man she expected me to be. I wasn't going to crumble under the weight of her betrayal. If she thought I was just going to disappear quietly, that I would slink away and let her keep living her double life, she was dead wrong. I stopped walking, standing on the edge of a busy intersection, watching cars blur past me. My mind was clear now, the fog of disbelief lifting. This wasn't just about her cheating. This was about me, about reclaiming the parts of myself she had tried to strip away, piece by piece, with her lies and manipulations. I didn't want her anymore, that much was certain, but I wasn't going to let her walk away from this without facing the consequences. I wasn't going to be the passive husband she expected, the one she thought would fade into the background while she moved on with her life. No, Claire wasn't going to get off that easy. I turned around, my heart racing with a new sense of clarity. I knew what I had to do. For months, I had been playing the role of the clueless, devoted husband, doing everything I could to keep our marriage afloat while she was busy tearing it apart behind my back. But now the blinders were off. Now, I saw her for what she truly was. Selfish, deceitful, and cruel. I pulled out my phone, my fingers steady this time as I scrolled through my contacts. I knew exactly who I needed to call. It wasn't a friend or family member. No, I needed something more final than that. I needed a lawyer. This wasn't just about ending the marriage. This was about taking control. I dialed the number and waited, each ring building the fire inside me. When the lawyer's office picked up, I didn't hesitate. "Hi, I need to talk to someone about filing for divorce," I said, my voice surprisingly calm. "And I'm going to need someone good. I want everything on the table." The woman on the other end didn't miss a beat. "Of course, let me get you set up with a consultation. Can I have some basic information first?" I gave her what she needed, every word cementing the fact that this was real. This was happening. I was done playing the fool. Claire wasn't going to have any more power over me. She could keep her lover, keep her lies, but I was going to take back my life. By the time I hung up, I felt something I hadn't felt all night. Control. For months, I'd been on autopilot, letting Claire dictate the terms of our relationship, bending over backward to make her happy while she was busy tearing everything apart. But not anymore. I was done being the victim. The relief that flooded through me wasn't total. It wasn't like the pain had vanished. But there was a sense of direction now, a purpose. I wasn't just reeling from what had happened. I was moving forward. I took a deep breath, staring at the empty street in front of me. The road stretched out, dark and unknown. But for the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid of it. Whatever came next, divorce, the fallout, the mess, I was ready. I didn't have all the answers yet, but I knew one thing for sure. I was going to come out of this stronger than before. Claire had no idea what kind of surprise she was in for. The next morning, everything felt sharper. The fog that had clouded my mind the night before was gone, replaced by a razor-sharp clarity. The sun filtered through the blinds in my hotel room, casting a harsh light on the reality of what I had to do. I was done letting Claire run my life. I wasn't her puppet anymore. After making a few calls, I was set. The lawyer I'd spoken to last night wasn't just good. He was ruthless. Exactly what I needed. I wasn't going to let her walk away from this without a fight. Claire had played me for too long, and now she was going to face the consequences. And I was going to make sure she felt every bit of what she'd done. She thought she could keep this a secret, that she could manipulate me, hide behind her web of lies. That was her mistake. Around noon, I went back to the house. I didn't sneak in this time, didn't feel the weight of dread I'd felt the night before. I was in control now. I parked out front and marched up the steps with a confidence I hadn't felt in months. The door was unlocked, and when I stepped inside, it felt like walking into a battlefield. But this time I wasn't the one unarmed. Claire was in the kitchen, sipping coffee like it was just another normal day, like she hadn't detonated a bomb in our marriage the night before. When she saw me, she barely flinched, just raised an eyebrow like I was interrupting her breakfast. "You're back?" she said casually, not even bothering to hide the annoyance in her voice. "I thought you'd be staying out for a while." I didn't answer her question. I just stood there, staring at her, taking in the sight of the woman I once thought I knew. Her hair was tied up in a messy bun, and she wore one of those oversized sweaters she loved. The image of her sitting there, so calm and indifferent, made my blood boil, but I kept it together. I wasn't here to blow up, to give her the satisfaction of seeing me unravel. "I talked to a lawyer," I said flatly, watching her face carefully. Her expression flickered, just for a second. She put her mug down, her eyes narrowing. "A lawyer? For what?" "For a divorce," I said, my voice calm and deliberate. "I'm done, Claire. You want out? You got it." She blinked, clearly not expecting me to move this fast. The shock in her eyes was brief, but it was there, and I savored it. "Jake, don't be ridiculous," she said, her voice softening, like she was shifting gears. "We don't need to get lawyers involved. We can figure this out." Figure this out? The audacity of it made me want to laugh. She had the nerve to cheat on me, lie to my face for months, and now she thought we could figure it out over coffee? "There's nothing to figure out," I said coldly. "I've already made up my mind." She stood up, crossing her arms defensively, and I could see her brain working, scrambling to regain control of the situation. "You're really going to throw away everything we've built just because of last night?" she said, her tone almost mocking. "Come on, Jake. I know you're hurt, but don't make a rash decision." My jaw tightened. "This isn't about last night, Claire. This is about you lying to me for months. This is about you throwing away our marriage long before I ever walked in on you with that guy." Her face darkened at that, and she stepped closer, her eyes narrowing into slits. "So what? You're gonna punish me for it now? Ruin both of our lives because you can't handle the truth?" It was unbelievable how she turned it back on me, like I was the one being unreasonable, like she hadn't been the one to destroy everything we had. I felt that old anger rising, the urge to scream at her, to make her understand the depth of her betrayal. But I wasn't here to argue. I had a plan and I was going to stick to it. "No, Claire," I said evenly. "I'm not going to ruin our lives, but you are about to get exactly what you deserve." Her eyes flashed with something between confusion and fear. She had no idea what was coming. And that's when I gave her the surprise. "I've already started the paperwork," I said, holding her gaze. "The divorce will be official soon. But that's not all. I'm going for everything. The house, the accounts, everything we built together. It's mine now. I made sure of that." Her jaw dropped. She wasn't laughing now. Her face drained of color as the reality of what I was saying sank in. For once, she didn't have a smart reply. "You think I didn't know?" I continued, stepping closer. "All those months you were sneaking around? You thought I was blind. You thought I didn't notice. But I did. I just didn't say anything because I wanted to make sure you'd bury yourself. And now you've lost it all." Claire's mask of arrogance crumbled, her eyes widening with panic. "Jake, wait." But I wasn't done. I was on a roll now, every word hitting her like a bullet. "You thought I was just going to take it, didn't you? That I'd crawl away and let you move on with your little fling. But guess what? You don't get to win this time. You wanted to throw away this marriage? Fine. But you're going to lose everything in the process." Her mouth opened, but no words came out. She was scrambling, grasping for control, but it was too late. The tables had turned, and she was on the losing side. Finally, she found her voice, but it was shaky. You can't do this." We, I interrupted, my voice cutting through her panic. "There's no we anymore, Claire. You made sure of that. You wanted freedom, you wanted out. Well, now you have it. But it's going to cost you everything." The silence that followed was suffocating. Claire stood there, her face pale, her confidence shattered. I could see the gears turning in her head, trying to figure out how to claw her way out of this, how to regain the upper hand. But there was nothing she could do. She'd lost. I had all the power now. Without another word, I turned and walked out the door, leaving her standing there in the ruins of her own making. This time, I didn't feel the crushing weight of betrayal. This time, I felt lighter. Claire had no idea what was coming next. She thought she'd had it all figured out. But now, she was the one who was in for the unforgettable surprise that I walked out of that house, out of her life, and felt something I hadn't expected: peace. The weight of the past few months, maybe even years, began to lift as soon as I shut that door behind me. For the first time in what felt like forever, I was in control, and Claire, she had no idea what was about to hit her. But the real storm came not from my words, not from the divorce filing or the threat of taking everything. No, the storm came when reality hit her harder than any argument or ultimatum I could have thrown. And I didn't have to wait long to see the collapse begin. That evening, I was back at the hotel, going through the paperwork with the lawyer on the phone. My plan was airtight, and with the evidence I gathered, the bank records, the phone logs, even some strategically timed photos of her with that guy, there was no way she could walk away unscathed. She had been reckless, sloppy even, and now it was going to cost her everything. Just as I hung up, my phone buzzed with a notification. Claire. I hesitated for a second before reading it. Jake, we need to talk. Please. That was it. No long apology, no more excuses. Just a desperate, brittle plea. She was starting to crack. I didn't respond. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of thinking she could still control the narrative. Instead, I sat back and waited. I knew what was coming next. It didn't take long. 20 minutes later, she called. I let it ring out, then again, and again. Each time, I ignored it, imagining her panic on the other end. The cool, composed Claire who had rolled her eyes at me, who had told me she didn't love me anymore, was finally feeling the walls close in. I could almost see it, her pacing back and forth in that kitchen, staring at her phone, her mind racing. But I didn't answer. Not yet. Another message came in, this one longer. Jake, please just pick up.
I'm sorry.
I don't want this to end like this. Can we just talk? I made a mistake. Okay? Just, please. I stared at the screen, a bitter laugh escaping my throat. Now she wanted to talk? Now, when she knew she had lost control, I could almost hear the shift in her voice, the panic, the desperation creeping in. She was realizing that this wasn't going to end on her terms. She was realizing that she wasn't in charge anymore. Still, I didn't reply. Instead, I grabbed my jacket and headed out. I wasn't going to sit around and let her manipulate me, twist this into something that made her feel like the victim. She had made her choices, and now she was going to have to live with them. But as I walked through the cold evening streets, my phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't a text or a call. It was something else. A screenshot from an unknown number. I stopped, my heart pounding as I opened it. My blood ran cold. It was a photo of me, taken last night when I was at the park, sitting on the bench, my head in my hands. And attached was a message. Thought you'd want to know where your wife's been the last few months. This isn't over. The guy, it was from him. He was watching me. I stood there, staring at the screen, my stomach twisting into knots. This wasn't just about Claire anymore. This was about him too. He wasn't just some random guy who'd stumbled into her life. He was playing a deeper game, and now he was coming after me. A mix of anger and fear surged through me. I wasn't sure if this was a threat or just a mind game, but either way, I wasn't going to be intimidated. I'd already been through too much to let this guy get under my skin. Before I could even think about what to do next, my phone rang again. This time it was Claire. I picked up, my voice cold and flat. What do you want, Claire? She hesitated, like she hadn't expected me to answer. Jake.
Jake, I'm sorry.
I'm so sorry. Her voice cracked, and for the first time, I heard real panic in her tone. I didn't mean for it to go this far. I swear I didn't. Didn't mean for what to go this far? I asked, barely able to keep my voice steady. I wasn't in the mood for more half-truths. Tom, she said quickly, as if the name alone would explain everything. He's not who you think he is. He's dangerous, Jake. This wasn't supposed to happen. I was just... She trailed off, her words tangled in fear. My mind raced. Dangerous? What the hell did that mean? Claire, what are you talking about? I demanded, my patience wearing thin. You need to start telling me the truth. Now. I didn't know how to get out. She confessed, her voice trembling. He wouldn't leave me alone. Started as this fling and I thought I could handle it, but he started showing up everywhere. He's been watching you. He's been following you, Jake. I tried to end it, but he won't go away. My blood ran cold. I gripped the phone tighter, my knuckles turning white. You brought this guy into our life, Claire? I said, barely keeping the rage from boiling over. And now you're telling me he's dangerous? She was crying now, her breath coming in short, panicked gasps.
I'm sorry.
I'm so sorry. I thought I could control it, but now it's out of control. He said he'd ruin everything if I left him. I didn't know what to do. I stood there, stunned, the world around me spinning. This wasn't just about cheating anymore. This was something darker, something twisted that I hadn't seen coming. And now I was caught in the middle of it. My mind flashed back to the screenshot, the photo of me sitting in the park. He had been watching me, stalking me, probably for weeks, and Claire had let it happen. She had let this psycho into our life, and now he was playing with both of us. You need to leave the house, I said quickly, cutting through her sobbing. Go somewhere safe. Now. Jake. Now, Claire. I snapped. I'll deal with him. I hung up before she could say anything else, my heart racing. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about survival. Tom had no idea what was coming for him that I hung up the phone and stood there in the middle of the street, trying to process the full scope of what was happening. This wasn't just some affair anymore. It had spiraled into something darker, something dangerous. Tom wasn't just Claire's lover. He was a threat, a predator who had been watching me, stalking me, while playing his twisted games with her. And now, it wasn't just about betrayal, it was about survival. I started walking, faster this time, as adrenaline pumped through my veins. My mind was spinning, but one thing was crystal clear. I needed to confront Tom, and I needed to end this once and for all. Claire had gotten herself tangled up with someone who wasn't just using her. He was controlling her. And by the looks of it, he had been trying to control me too, lurking in the background, pulling the strings. The thought of him watching me, knowing my every move, made my skin crawl. But this time, I wasn't going to be caught off guard. I wasn't going to let him win. I dialed one more number, my brother, Mike. He was the one person I knew I could trust. The one person who wouldn't ask questions, who would just show up. Jake? Everything okay? Mike answered, his voice heavy with concern. Not really, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I need your help. Without hesitation, Mike's tone shifted. Where are you? I gave him the address of a bar near my house, told him I'd meet him there in 20 minutes. I didn't have time to explain the whole story over the phone, and honestly, I wasn't even sure where to start. But I knew one thing for sure. I couldn't face Tom alone. Not with everything Claire had just told me. By the time I reached the bar, Mike was already there, leaning against his truck. His face was hard, eyes searching mine for answers. What's going on? He asked, his voice low but serious. You look like you've seen a ghost. I shook my head, trying to find the right words. It's Claire. She's been cheating on me, but it's more than that. The guy she's been seeing, Tom, he's dangerous, Mike. He's been stalking me. He's been following me for weeks, maybe months. Claire tried to end it, but now he's threatening her. And me. Mike's jaw clenched, his fists balling up at his sides. What the hell do you mean he's been following you? I pulled out my phone, showing him the screenshot of the photo Tom had sent me. The one of me in the park, sitting alone, completely unaware that I was being watched. Mike's face darkened as he took in the image. That bastard, he muttered under his breath. So what's the plan? I looked at him, feeling the weight of the decision pressing down on me. I need to end this, Mike. I need to confront him, but I'm not going in blind. Claire said he's unpredictable, dangerous. I don't know what he's capable of. Mike nodded, his face set in grim determination. Then let's find out where he is. We'll handle this together. I had already done my homework. Claire had been sloppy in her affair,